Repodcasting is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB.
Have you ever watched a movie and wondered why to cast that woman or that guy? Well, here's your chance to give it a try. We're repodcasting.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Repodcasting. I'm Lucia Julio.
And I'm Janet, and we have a special guest this month. It is Dan Retson. He is our relative. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you for having me. I really enjoy your podcast, but I can't wait to be part of it.
Yay. So, Dan, tell us a little bit about, because you have a background in film. So just briefly, refresh our memories on that. What's your background?
Okay, I was a math major in university in my last year, just to switch it up a little bit so I didn't go crazy. I took a film course, and my film teacher encouraged me to pursue it. And I wasn't really interested in going on and being a teacher or an actuary or accountant or whatever you do with a math degree yet. So I thought, okay, sure. I applied to Ryerson University, and I got in their filmmaking, image arts, film studies program, and I went through 4 years of filmmaking and film production and all that sort of stuff, and writing and directing, and it was a ton of fun. It was the best 4 years ever. But at the end of that, I decided I'm not really interested in working in that industry, which is very, very all out all the time, late nights. You're only as good as who you know and you know who you talk to, and that's just not my style. And so I said this was fun, it was great, and I made a lot of good friends, but now I'm ready to be a math teacher. So that's what I am now.
Okay, that's cool. So tell us about your favorite sort of films, or your favorite genre even.
Yeah, okay. I have a lot of films. I actually kind of like B movies a lot. They're kind of my favorites. And so at my heart, like in terms of going to film school and like all the kind of pretentious whatever, the stuff that I loved the most was like the French New Wave, because they felt the same way. So the French filmmakers from the 1960s. They were in love with Hollywood, like B movies and like B westerns and that sort of thing. And so Francois Truffaut is like one of my favorites, and he did a movie called The 400 Blows. That was one of my faves. But always up there, one of my all-time favorite movies, true B movie, is Joe versus Volcano.
Okay. So this is cool, because I feel we were a little intimidated to have you, just because you have a background in film. So we're like, okay, like we're gonna sound like total amateurs next to Dan. So Lucia, let's talk about the film that we're recasting this month.
Okay. So, in case you can't tell, I'm sick. My voice sounds terrible, but we will try to get through this. Well, this movie was Janet's choice, actually. And we're going to do the 2000 movie, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Last month I said it was from 2006 because I did not realize that this movie was so old. It is an 18-year-old movie. It could vote if it was a person.
I know, I didn't realize it was already an 18-year-old movie as well. So, yeah. Do you want to say anything, Dan?
I guess I'll third the opinion. It was shocking that it was that old. It just made me feel very old, because I thought it was like, wow, what a cool new current remake of. And then when I saw this new one that was coming out with this cartoon, I'm like, why are they doing that? They just did one a couple of years ago. Of course, most people who would be interested in it weren't even born. So
yeah, it's true.
For myself, when it came out, I had no interest in seeing it because I love the 30-minute cartoon from 1966. It's the best. It's perfect. There's no need to change it, to add to it. And, to turn that into a 90-minute movie, you're going to fill it with a bunch of dumb stuff, which is exactly what they did. Is this the first time you saw it for this podcast?
It's not the first time I watched it, but I wasn't hugely anticipating this movie when it came out. I mean, I was never a big fan of Jim Carrey, so I didn't really care about it the way I feel some people did. Like we were talking earlier today, this was a huge payday for Jim Carrey. Like at the time, he was paid $20 million to make this movie. And I remember that it made the news and it was such a big deal that he was making that kind of money for the film. So it was a big deal when it came out, but I wasn't like super into it. I don't know. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, this was the first time I saw the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, watching it for this. I probably almost the same as Lucy, I would guess. I mean, I hate to repeat but like I loved the original, the 26-minute thing, and I just thought, wow, they are going to destroy this, and they absolutely did. It was you know what I thought the funny part was? The plot line of the 26-minute film. They may have actually accomplished that in less than 26 minutes. Like most of this film focused on the other absolute garbage that was totally unnecessary. And so I'm like, who stole the movie? Like, it was ridiculous.
So let's talk box office now. So the budget for this movie was $123 million. And the box office, this was worldwide gross, it was $345 million. So it did really well. And we were actually, we kind of Googled some facts about it. And this movie still holds the record for the highest opening weekend for a Christmas-themed movie. So that's pretty impressive because, I mean, there's Christmas-themed movies that come out every year, obviously, and this still holds the record. So
maybe because this movie was so anticipated but then was so disappointing, nobody ever went out in droves again. So it's going to hold the record forever.
But it made a lot of money. That's the thing. It was a huge success.
Yeah, how did this movie possibly outperform Elf or any other movie that was so good and so entertaining?
Yeah.
And that's not only the one, that's the one that comes to mind as the best one, but there have been good ones since then and before then, and this is $345 million.
Yeah.
I'm surprised if it made $345.
No. I mean, how did this outperform Fred Claus?
Yeah. Or the
Stop it with Fred Claus. Enough.
Or Jack Frost.
Wow. Okay, so I will do the synopsis of the movie. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. I'm not going to do a synopsis of this stupid movie. I'm just going to say the beginning of the one that I like. I guess we can get into the casting.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, we like to let our special guest, go first. So, Dan.
Take it away, Dan.
Okay, well, I really want to apologize if I step on any of your casting decisions or I don't want to, but even if it's a double up, I'll be fine with that. I won't, because
I don't think any of us will have
the
same.
We think we've all gone in different directions?
I think so.
Okay. So, I guess where do I start? I guess I'll just go into my thinking. Before I watched the movie, I just thought, who would make a good Grinch based on the original one? And also thinking, what do I know about Jim Carrey? He's completely annoying. And that's not entirely true. I love Jim Carrey when he's not trying to be funny. He's amazing.
Yeah.
And I wish he played this not trying to be funny.
Right.
Yeah.
He might have actually done a good job.
Yeah.
But he pulled out he went straight to the mask and then dialed it up to 15. It was horrible and unwatchable.
Yeah.
And he was entirely responsible for that. I actually think this could be it would never be a great movie, but it could be an entertaining kind of fun movie to watch.
Yeah.
If he wasn't in it. Which comes to the point. So I thought, first I was like, I'm going to cast Al Pacino. And I thought that would be so much fun.
Wow.
And then, I thought, I just had this great idea of Al Pacino being this sort of really stick in the mud kind of guy, right? The Grinch is supposed to be old. The Grinch is supposed to be mad about Christmas and unhappy with the whole thing. And I just thought he'd be perfect. But okay, so then I watched the movie and Jim Carrey just made me so angry. In the first 6 minutes, I was done with him. And he just kept on going. So I eventually narrowed it down. I want somebody who's the opposite. I want somebody who reminds me of the original Grinch. Because his main problem was he was more or less a psychopath in this whole movie. And it made me not want him to change. Like, I didn't want his heart to grow big. I just wanted him to be, like, encased in concrete in that cave and hidden from the rest of society, because he was a danger to society. I mean, honestly, him and the love interest, the woman from The Good Wife, the lawyer, I don't remember the name.
Christine
Lockhart.
Baranski.
Yeah. They honestly seem to have a relationship kind of similar to maybe like what I would imagine Paul Bernardo and Caroline Mokel would have. Like, honestly, they...
Where is this podcast going?
I'm just thinking...
That's amazing.
They are just like, they seem like psychotic, evil people. She was incensed every time he did something violent, and she would encourage him to do it. She'd be like, oh. And it looked like she was getting like almost turned on by that. And it was really disturbing. And I was thinking, this is for children. Yeah. Somehow his psychotic behavior, where she is getting like literally lusty, watching him destroy things and create chaos, is somehow targeted at children. Not to mention his eyes. My 3-year-old ran away crying after 2 minutes of trying to watch this movie, because I thought, oh, the Grinch, she'll like it. Like, Daddy, that's scary. And I looked on the screen and I saw this guy with burning yellow eyes and like a terrifying dog face, and it was Jason and crossed with Harry and the Hendersons. But anyway, so my thought was to get as far away from that, as dignified as possible, and I thought Benedict Cumberbatch would have been the perfect guy, in my opinion, because it's the everything Jim Carrey wasn't. I thought he could be refined, be angry by the Who's craziness, you know, instead of like being crazier than the Who's himself, like just being like, I want it quiet, I want it nice, I want it exact, precise. Every time Jim Carrey broke something in his house, I just wondered how it got put there in the first place. Like, what person came into his house and organized it so that he could destroy it? Because he was obviously a nightmare destruction king. So, like, how did his house become organized for him to jump on top of it and break everything he owned? So, Benedict Cumberbatch,
He's your Grinch. Yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch, I think, would be good. And it's funny because he's doing we were just talking about this, he's doing the voice for this new animated version.
He is?
Did you not know that?
No, I didn't know that at all. Oh, now I feel like, oh, come on, man. That's the worst. I'll go back to Al Pacino now.
Yeah, no, he's doing the voice, but he's not doing his own voice. He didn't want to do it with a British accent. So he's got like this American accent going. And apparently this was his idea. Like, he was just on the Kelly and Ryan show talking about it this morning.
Oh, well, I don't agree with that at all, because it's his British accent that I was imagining, you know? Yeah. Like Sherlock being the Grinch would be perfect because, you know, crusty and angry and offending people, but totally in control and, you know, not kind of making me want to hide and never let my kids see him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, like, I thought the same thing. I was like, with his British accent, like, to me, he would be the perfect Grinch for sure. Well, you love Benedict Cumberbatch.
I do. And when I first heard that he was going to be doing the animated version, I was really excited. And then when I saw the trailer and saw that he was doing some weird American accent, I was disappointed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I probably won't be watching that one. Yeah. Until we do a podcast on it in 18 years.
Yeah, it's a sort of an odd creative choice that he obviously came up with, and I'm just surprised that was the direction that he wanted to go in. It was his idea, so whoever is producing the movie, they obviously let him go with that. Yeah. Right?
Maybe he just got carried away with his Doctor Strange voice and like got excited about doing accents and just wanted to keep on doing it. I don't know.
It sounds weird. Like, to me, it sounds a bit weird.
It does.
Yeah. So should I go next with my casting? Okay. I'm of the same mind as Dan. Like, I felt that Jim Carrey was, like, it was a manic sort of performance. Okay. I didn't find it... Like, I guess it's supposed to be amusing. I didn't find anything amusing about it. I can't understand why this would be geared towards children. It is frightening.
Yeah.
And to me, yeah, like, he just was like a serial killer Grinch. Like, that was kind of the vibe that you got off of him. Mm-hmm. But also, like, that's Jim Carrey. Like, he dials it up so high, and it's was too much. And maybe, 18 years ago, Jim Carrey's career was obviously doing a lot better than it is now, right? Because they paid him $20 million to do the movie. And he obviously had the clout at that time. Like, I think his career was on fire 18 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously he was like a hot commodity and they selected him. I went with someone who I thought could have played maybe the more amusing aspects of him, but maybe wouldn't be as scary. So I went with John C. Reilly.
Huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, Lucy? You're like, your eyes did this weird thing just now.
I'm processing. I really like that. What was John C. Reilly doing in the year 2000?
I'm glad you asked that, Lucia. He, in the year 2000, The Perfect Storm came out, and he was in that. But John C. Reilly, like, when you actually take a minute to look at his filmography, he has done so much work. Like, he's been in so many movies that I didn't even realize he was in. He's had, like, this really long and varied career. And he's done a bit of everything. Like, he's done drama. He's done a lot of comedies, obviously. Like, when I think of John C. Reilly, I always think of Will Ferrell.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, they've done
Step Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Step Brothers.
Yeah.
And Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is coming out soon.
Yeah. So I always think of him more as a comedic actor, but he's quite adept at doing drama. I've seen him in some dramatic roles.
Didn't he win an Oscar for Chicago for his performance?
Oh, I don't know. We'll have to Google that. I'll let you Google that,
Okay.
Lucia,
Go ahead.
while I keep talking. Oh, sorry. I think Dan wants to say something. Yes, Dan.
No, it just reminded me, John C. Reilly, I remember his performance from Magnolia, and I remember that not being particularly comedic, but really well done. And I think he wasn't actually considered a comedic actor at that point, until he did Step Brothers and stuff and kind of ventured out.
So I feel like he's got a range, and I think he could have done a better job than Jim Carrey. And also, like, it would have been interesting to see how it would have changed his career, to do like such a big studio movie and to have like such a big lead role. Like, it would have been interesting to see what would have happened to John C. Reilly's career from there.
Not to mention, the studio could have saved about $17 million. He did not win an Oscar, but he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Chicago.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I just think he just would have played it differently. He would have come at it from a different angle, and I would have enjoyed seeing him in that role. So he's my pick.
As you may know, dear listener, Repodcasting is part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. And we have fantastic podcasts on the podcast network, other movie podcasts, such as I Have Some Notes. I actually went back through their archive recently and listened to their episode on this movie, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The episode is about 2 years old now, but it was really fun to listen to them talk about this movie, and it helped me prepare for my own recasting. So definitely check them out along with all the other great podcasts at albertapodcastnetwork.com. And moving right along to my own casting, I thought Jim Carrey was too wacky. It was silly. Like, there was no need for the Grinch to be like that. There was not even a trace of that in the original, in the book or in the original cartoon. Like, it was only because it was Jim Carrey. There's no way it was written like that either. So initially I was like, well, it was funny, but not as wacky. And I was thinking of Brendan Fraser. Yeah, because he had done some like comedic stuff at that time.
George of the Jungle.
George of the Jungle. And in the year 2000, he did it's called Bedazzled, I think.
Yes.
Where Liz Hurley's the devil. And so I was like, oh, good. If he did this instead, Bedazzled wouldn't exist. So, but in the end, I was like, I think he's still a little, like, at least the way I'm picturing it, he's still a little too silly.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to go more like in the direction, like, of what you were saying, somebody refined, kind of more the opposite of Jim Carrey. And so I ended up landing on Tim Curry.
Oh.
Nice.
Yeah, from Rocky Horror
Yeah.
Picture Show.
Mm.
And, well, like, maybe this is a slightly uninspired pick because in Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, he plays the concierge, and they'd actually do, like, his face and going into the Grinch's face.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'll show it to you later.
Okay.
So, but that, like, when I was thinking of that, I'm like, oh, he's perfect. Like,
Yeah.
I think he'd be really good. And then also, like, because he does kind of look like the Grinch already, I think they did go a little too crazy with the makeup. Oh my god, my voice. So, I know they won an Oscar for Best Makeup, but I think it was too much. Like, to me, they reached the uncanny valley. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
AI Valley.
Yeah, so it's like, do you know the movie A Christmas Carol, the animated one? Or like Polar Express.
Mm-hmm.
So those got so realistic, and like they went too far to the point where like everybody just looked creepy.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this movie, they were trying to make them look so much like the Who's from the drawings that they just end up looking really creepy.
Was this movie, like, I don't remember, but was it in 3D when it came out?
No, it was before the whole 3D craze hit.
Okay.
You know, but I just have to say about Jim Carrey's costume, like, not only was it terrifying, it was also, like, slightly obscene. Like, you could see his butt entirely. And the Grinch doesn't even have a butt. Like, I have a Grinch toy at home that's, like, cute and whatever. He's got a smirk. And it looks like the real-life version of this animated Grinch. And that's exactly what I would hope for in a live action version. But instead, they made it look like he actually was like, basically like an animal that had grown green fur. Had this weird dog face. You could see his anatomy, and it was just really disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a children's movie.
Yeah, no, it was disturbing. And basically it was just like a vanity vehicle for Jim Carrey. Like, I got that sense that they just sort of, it was like, here's $20 million, like, do whatever you want and be as wacky as you want to be.
And can I just bring up the Lederhosen? Does anybody wonder where
Yeah.
I don't know about your viewers, so I don't want to, but I mean, that deserves kind of like a more emphatic word than I think I can use. But what the heck? Like,
you can swear. We're an explicit podcast.
Really? Okay, so what the fuck? Why is he wearing Lederhosen? That's not in the book. It's not, it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't enjoy the movie, period.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Apparently the makeup process was so like daunting, and it took many hours that Jim Carrey sought counseling from a CIA agent who taught him torture resistance methods. It's so crazy. Like, is there any need to go that far?
That's a little bit just, that's Jim Carrey, right? Like, I mean, like,
Yeah.
honestly, the man is unstable. Like, I don't think he could, like, I don't know, sit through one class in university maybe and not, need the torture training. Like, honestly.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because we were talking, like, Ron Howard directed this movie. And, we were talking about how, like, everyone always says Ron Howard is such a wonderful person. Like, you never hear anyone say anything bad about him. And I also feel like they always bring Ron Howard in when, like, there's a difficult project to do or there's difficult people to deal with. Because, he was the one that came in and when the Solo movie, like,
That's right, I
basically
was gonna say that.
was
Yeah.
crashing and they were having all those issues with it, they brought in Ron Howard because he's so like stable, he's so experienced, he's been around a long time, and he's obviously really good with like large productions, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's the company man, you know? He's the ultimate Hollywood guy. You need something done, you call Ron Howard.
Yeah.
But Cinderella Man, I think, had some problems around that. He was known as the stabilizer. Maybe it was Russell Crowe throwing a phone at somebody or something during... But, you know, like, he pulled that one into the port as well. Yeah. But, yeah, like, honestly, I have to say, though, Ron Howard's casting decisions, maybe if they cast less of their family, it might be slightly better. Like, his brother... Here's a rule for Ron Howard should follow. If somebody has never been in a movie other than your movie, you aren't allowed to cast them. Yeah. Because, like, he casts his brother in every movie, which is great, you know. He's in Apollo 11. It's kind of like the Alfred Hitchcock thing. Like, where's Ron Howard's brother going to be? But, and he, by the way, I think he was the mayor's toady. Yeah. Yeah. But back to the Lederhosen, the Alpenhorn guy, that was, like, a relative of Brian Grazer, which is like Ron Howard's. Like as I saw the credits going up, I'm like, cast some. Honestly, you had to have Lederhosen in it just to get your relative in. Like we had to endure the Lederhosen because they needed a cameo for a relative. It doesn't make any sense. Well,
they had, it was such a huge cast. Like they had so many extras that it was probably like they just started randomly bringing in family members. But it's true, his brother is always in every movie.
Ron Howard was really thankful that Jim Carrey was going through the torturous makeup process. So one day he decided to direct in the Grinch full costume. So he went to set early, he got all dolled up in the Grinch costume, but he didn't tell anybody he was doing this. So when Jim Carrey saw him, he got really mad because he thought it was his stunt double, and he was really mad that the guy looked nothing like him.
So Jim Carrey.
Yeah. And so, like, then they figured it out, and Ron Howard directed the whole day in that costume.
I want to hang out with Ron Howard.
No, right?
He seems like he'd be like a really cool, just all-around nice guy to hang out with.
Yeah, he seems like I'd love to go, like in Arrested Development, when they go to his family barbecue, that would be almost perfect, you know? Oh, man, I wonder if he wishes he had a mulligan on this movie. Like now, you know, like, if I could only do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that is just mind-blowing to me is that this movie is just completely missing the point of the original source material. Like, it's in this one, the Who's are greedy capitalists, and the Grinch is the one who has to teach them to, like, not care about stuff at Christmas. Yeah. The relationship between him and Cindy Lou Who is just weird. It's too much. Like, why does she love him so much? And she's too old to not recognize him when he's dressed up as Santa in her house.
Yeah.
It's all of it. Every single decision, not just casting, every single decision in this movie is like, what were you thinking? I don't get it.
It's entirely inconsistent, too. I mean, like, you've got Cindy Lou Who somehow figures out the true meaning of Christmas, but she doesn't understand that she shouldn't hang out with this psychopathic guy who would probably eat her. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Like, it's... Yeah.
I totally agree. And then I also wanted to mention,
any other fun facts?
Yeah, the actors went to Who school to be able to, like, act and walk and talk like Who's. I didn't see that personally. No. I don't know. They failed.
Yeah. So, I guess Who's are hypersexual beings that always wanted, you know, and actually just Who women. And I would just like to understand who wrote this movie and their understanding of women and how that women get, like, aroused constantly by things that men do. For example, Cindy Lou's mom gets all excited when her husband at the end says something, you know, manly, I guess. And then the other character, it's sort of like eye-rolling. And I'm like, I don't know. I've never met a woman like that. Yeah. Like, you know, like...
And Christine Baranski has, like, she has her cleavage out most of the time, and she's an attractive woman, and that's fine if, like, she wants to. But number one, this is a kids movie. She's a Who. A Who's don't have their cleavage on display.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey falls on her and his face falls into her cleavage.
That's
Who
so
is this movie for?
sexualized.
It is
Yeah.
not for children.
Yeah. It's funny when you said about who wrote it, because when I was doing the research on Wikipedia for it, apparently there were like 8 rewrites of the script.
Wow.
Yeah, they needed like 8 more.
So, I mean, there were issues there, obviously, right?
Yeah. And
Sorry, did either of you notice they inserted a second holiday into this movie? And most of the movie was donated to that holiday, not Christmas?
yeah.
What was that holiday even?
Millennium. No, what was it?
I forget.
Some
It was-
Who millennium type thing.
Yeah.
Jubilation. The Jubilation. Yeah, it's already a Christmas movie. Why?
Yeah, like, Ron Howard literally, like, got his start. Well, actually, no, I guess Andy Griffith. But, I mean, like, he was a major part of a show that coined the phrase "jump the shark" and then made the movie that jumped the shark worse than any movie I've ever watched.
That's very true. Oh, that's terrible. Yeah. And you were saying that like the Who's are hypersexualized beings. Absolutely. They're swingers. There's a scene where they are putting their keys in a bowl. The Who's.
Yeah, at the party, of course, yeah. And you're just like, it's upsetting.
Yeah. And you know, I'm not a fan of people saying things like, this movie ruined my childhood and whatever. And it didn't. This movie didn't ruin my childhood, and it didn't even ruin the source material. I will always go back and watch that and love it. But at the same time, it infuriates me that it exists. So I like kind of get a little bit those people who get mad when things are remade.
Yeah, this movie reached back into my childhood and like took a dump on it. It was just awful.
Yeah.
So, do we have any other comments about this movie? Because clearly we all agree that it sucks and we didn't like it.
But actually, I think this movie is beautiful for your guys' concept of recasting, because honestly, I couldn't tell you whether this movie would be actually likable, or the sexualizing thing is always going to be a problem. And Cindy Lou being older is weird and dumb choice. But Jim Carrey's performance single-handedly ruins the movie in such a way that I would actually, subject myself to watching it again if somebody else was playing that role.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, if Jim Carrey was not in this movie, like, the movie actually could have had a chance. Maybe it wouldn't have been, like, completely amazingly likable, but it would have been a different movie, obviously, yeah.
Apparently, Jim Carrey did admit to feeling ashamed for not trying to prevent some of the adult humor in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, at least he recognizes that it was a mistake.
Yeah.
He says bitchin' to Cindy Lou Who. It's nuts.
It's not a children's movie. No, it's not.
He did the same thing with Kick-Ass. After he made the movie that was like hyper violent, he decided he didn't like it and started like denigrating it as he was doing his movie tour. I mean, the man is not stable.
Yeah,
he's really not.
Yeah.
I do just want to quickly mention Tim Burton was considering to direct at one point, but then there was a scheduling conflict. Would have been a very different movie.
Yeah, for sure.
I would have loved to have seen that.
And then, didn't we talk about who the other potential actors were? Who were they? Again, sorry, Lucy, because I can't remember now.
Okay, it was Eddie Murphy and Jack Nicholson are the two that I saw.
Okay.
Both weird.
Yeah, Eddie Murphy would have been like Pluto Nash all over again. But, like just it would have been a string of bad movies for Eddie Murphy. It wouldn't have really been much different from what he was doing at the time, I don't think.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson, interesting, but I think probably that would be a fail too.
I think so too.
Yeah, I can't see either one of those actors taking on this role. I really can't. No, I can't envision that happening.
And I do just want to say one more thing, because I know we're piling on to Jim Carrey, but I have to tell this one. So Audrey Geisel, Dr. Seuss's widow, she went to the set of Man on the Moon to see if Jim Carrey was right for the role. Like, he was being considered at that point. And he was so deep in the character of Andy Kaufman that he had to do an impression of Jim Carrey doing an impression of the Grinch for this. And it got him the role. I don't like Jim Carrey. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. He makes me mad.
It's interesting. I wonder if your listeners can hear an eye roll on the...
Yeah, he's definitely, like, there's that pretension about him for sure. And it's interesting because, you know, you see how his career has devolved over the years, and you have to wonder if, like, people just finally got fed up of working with him and having to deal with these sort of things that were happening, right?
Yeah, and I would say, like, that's too bad that she went to the Man on the Moon to see if he could do it, because that was like one of the few movies where he's actually tolerable. It's well made and he's great in it, and along with like The Truman Show and his absolute best is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Mm-hmm. And all those movies, he's not funny, so maybe he should never be funny again. But actually, I think he's decided not to act anymore, which is so Jim Carrey. He's been painting in his own house for 10 years. Yeah, puts on art shows and stuff.
Well, luckily he took a break from painting to make Dumb and Dumber 2.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
It's time for another break to tell you about the podcast Back to School Again by Katrina Ingram, presented by Norquist College. Katrina interviews people who have returned to the classroom in midlife and chronicles her own journey as an adult who finds herself back in school. You'll also learn about the unique programs at Norquist College that help it provide learning opportunities for all. It's a bi-weekly podcast, and you can read the show notes and subscribe at backtoschoolagain.ca. And now back to the show.
Okay, and now it is time for our segment.
Hold me close, young Tony Danza.
Hey. It's time for Hold Me Close, Young Tony Danza. Low register. Okay. So this is the segment where we take Tony Danza and cast him into one of the roles in this movie. So we'll let our guest, Dan, go first.
Okay. There's a ton of cameo type whatever roles, but when you actually get down to people who speak, we're pretty limited. So but I think he would actually do pretty good. I'm tempted to throw him in there the Grinch just to get rid of Jim Carrey, right? Yeah, I would love to see him as the dad, because he's an awesome dad. I mean, who's the boss, you know? So yeah, I think I would throw him in for the dad, and that would make the movie better too, because the dad, like, totally, one of the things, he ignored his child for like 90% of this movie, and then at the end he defends her, and it's sort of like, so when people are watching, you actually noticed your child was like questioning the value of Christmas, and you shut her down at every possible turn. But when there's a crowd watching, oh yeah, you're a good dad. It's just like insane.
Tony Danza would be a great dad, as we know. So I cast Tony Danza as the mayor.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
His name was Augustus Mayhew, and it was Jeffrey Tambor who was in the role. And so I thought Tony Danza would be a great mayor. Come on, he's got like that commanding kind of presence. So that's where I put him in.
Yeah, I like it. I actually went in the same direction as Dan. Oh. I cast him as Cindy Lou Who's dad, who I don't know what the name of the character is. For the same reasons, of course. He's a great dad. Yeah. And he'd be fun as a mailman.
Yeah, but I'm all for throwing him in there for Jeffrey Tambor. I can't imagine Tony Danza having a Me Too moment.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, of course, you know, we're about like 3 minutes
I
away from...
No.
I know, right? It's impossible.
Okay. So the ratings for the movie, on IMDb, this got a 46%, and on Rotten Tomatoes, a 53%. So... I actually consider those pretty generous. Mm-hmm. I myself, I think I gave it like a 10%.
I'm surprised.
Yeah. So we do have one thing that we're so excited to talk about. We have a listener email.
Yay! So someone finally emailed us. And like when Lucia forwarded the email to me, like I literally messaged her in all caps. And I was like, listener email, finally! So we would like to give a shout out to Keith, who emailed us. He took the time, so thank you, Keith, for listening and for taking the time to email us. And I'm actually going to read this email that Keith sent us because he talks about Mel Brooks movies. So we thought we'd have like a little chat about Mel Brooks. So here we go. So, okay, sorry, I'm a bit behind in my listening, but at the end of the episode when you were talking about Mel Brooks movies, my fave, I was shocked, appalled, and flabbergasted. Okay, no, really, I'm just pulling your leg. That you didn't talk about Spaceballs. It still holds up. My kids love it. You have to go back and watch it, if for nothing else than John Candy. And not to mention it in a Star Wars episode, for shame. But like you said, Lucia, I think that's because that's the movie that imprinted on me at the right time. Blazing Saddles is hilarious. And to watch it now, you say, wait, did he really just say that? The History of the World Part 1, all just classics. You owe it to yourselves, if you haven't already, to listen to the interviews that Mark Maron did with both Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks on the WTF podcast. I'm not ranting, I promise. You just said no one ever emails you, so here you are. I'm just midway through the Rain Man episode and will send my rant under separate cover. Ciao for now, Keith. So thanks, Keith, for taking the time to send the email. As for Mel Brooks, like, I feel like Lucia and Dan probably have more to say about Mel Brooks. Yeah, I'm not, like, I can appreciate that Mel Brooks is funny, and I certainly understand why he has such a devoted sort of fan base. I totally get it. I'm just not like a huge fan of his work. But I'm going to watch Spaceballs because I think that maybe I haven't given him enough of a chance.
Spaceballs was my introduction to Mel Brooks. When I was a kid, my brother and I discovered, I was very young and he was about 5 years older than me, so I'm guessing I was like 8 and he was, that would make him like 13 or so. I discovered Columbia House, and we somehow convinced our parents to like order VHS cassettes through the mail. And Spaceballs, along with trying to think of some other highly inappropriate movies that we ordered for, especially for my age, you know, like one was I think Eddie Murphy Saturday Night Live, which I knew Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood front to back, and hi, I'm Buckwheat, remember me? All that stuff. So Spaceballs was absolutely ingrained in my mind. I could just, every second of that movie. Which, Spaceballs is kind of inappropriate, but I'm glad to hear Keith is showing it to his children, keeping that inappropriate. It's going.
Keeping that spirit alive.
Yeah, because it was great.
Yeah, I saw that one pretty young too. I mean, I was pretty like innocent kid, and I watched things like Three's Company even were super inappropriate. I watched Dallas with my mom. Like, I know that, or the Golden Girls even would have, sex jokes.
Sex constantly.
Constantly. But I know that I just didn't get it. It went over my head, and that's that. Like, it didn't scar me. It's fine.
Oh, but it did.
I'm fine, Janet.
Damn it, Janet. No, sorry.
But yeah, I really liked Spaceballs too. I did know what Star Wars was, and I recognized that it was parodying it, and I thought it was funny. I still think it's funny. I actually watched it not too long ago, but it is dated. Like, I still will say it's funny, but I also recognize that it's dated.
So I need to watch Spaceballs. I'm going to add that to my movie watching list. And I want to see Blazing Saddles as well.
It's amazing. Yeah, Blazing Saddles, it's like the premise of it is just so funny that they did this. They're like, the guys are like looking for basically a patsy to be the sheriff, and they look out their window and they see a black man being hung, and they're like, there's our sheriff. And they immediately appoint the black man to be the sheriff, so that, I guess, when he dies, nobody will care. And I mean, it's just sort of like, it just shows how crazy racist the Wild West was. And to actually like bring that up, well, the whole time, you know, everybody else was busy celebrating Clint Eastwood and how wonderful and how cool those times were, to be like, oh, by the way, there was a little bit of racism going on at that time, just to say, because, you know, Civil War just ended and stuff. And, you know, to make that, and not just to make that the main point of the movie, but to make that movie a comedy is just amazing.
Right.
So that's where the inappropriateness comes in, I'm guessing. With
Not just there.
Okay. So I'm gonna have to watch it. But Gene Wilder is in it, isn't he?
Yeah. He's like the best marksman. There's a best line when he like holds out his hand. You know, he's supposed to be the best guy, and he holds out his hand to show how
steady
he is. Yeah. And I don't remember the actor's name, because I don't think he was in much else. The guy who played the main.
I don't know.
Yeah, but the sheriff. And the sheriff, he's basically his only friend in the whole world, the only person that will support him. And the sheriff goes, steady as a rock. And then he holds up his other hand and he goes, yeah, but this is my shooting hand. And it's flapping all over the place.
Okay, yeah. So, because I like Gene Wilder, he's funny. So definitely, Keith, I am going to try and give Mel Brooks a chance, and I'm going to watch those two movies.
Yay, good job, Keith. You got Janet to watch more Mel Brooks. Okay, so next month our movie will be American Beauty. We're going to go back to what we were doing with the Dustin Hoffman episode, and we're taking away Kevin Spacey's Oscar.
Yes.
Bye.
See you later.
Okay, so thanks so much, Dan, for being here. We really were excited.
Dan. Thanks, Dan, for being here.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot of fun to sit around and talk about movies, and yay, now I'm famous. So.
You're so famous. You'll be really famous in Alberta now.
Oh, if you made it in Alberta, you can make it anywhere, right?
I can't tell if that was sarcastic. Okay, well, thanks very much. Hope you keep listening. We won't talk about our movie challenge today, but we will on our next month's episode. So that's it for now.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.